is a world in itself full of wonders and resources unthought of. It is so absurdly near you, yet so unapproachably distant. But I do not want to talk. Please forgive my absence and silence. I cannot afford to scatter my mind away just now. These moments are solemn to me. To the terrace and the inner garden of his childhood, these were what he, as when he was confined to the servants' quarters, he had added another site, this one from the youth, the Padma. Each of them was an insulated sanctuary on what the psychoanalyst Nederland calls a walled-off garden, away not only from the turbulence and strife of the outer world, but also from some emotional problems and involvement with people. It is under such circumstances that in the gifted person, the world of repressed visual, auditory, and kinesthetic memories emerges, which the artist transmutes into the creative act. These three sides were Rabindranath's personal symbols of both curative and also creative power. He would return to them frequently, physically or in imagination, especially in times of psychic turmoil, and emerge strengthened. Thank you. There are more to it.
Thank you so much, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, yet again a big round of applause for Mr. Sudhir Kakkar. It's just about time when you had everything done, and it's 15 minutes for you and questions. So, anyone, any questions? I was sure about, ma'am, you were going to ask a question. There we go.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kakkar. This was awesome. So like I told you, I've been psychoanalytically trained at the Wright Institute. So everything you were saying just made so much sense to me. I have a question. How do you define or distinguish between psyche and heart?
Psyche is, as I define, psyche is the word the psychologist uses, heart is the one word the poet uses. So I do not distinguish in both.
So you use it interchangeably?
I would use them interchangeably. Heart, I would use them. Heart is the poet's word for the psyche, or psyche is the psychologist's word for the heart.
And then mind?
Mind, both are uninterested in. Mind is much more, the conscious processes are much more than the unconscious processes, which are really into the depths of the heart or the depths of the psyche. So mind to me is much more of the mental processes which we are conscious of, much more that. It has the other parts. So it has the unconscious, the cognitive unconscious will also come in the mind, but not the dynamic psychology. But we won't go into the
okay, thank you.
Psychological parts.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
We have a question coming from there.
When one reads Rabindranath, it's like one would say that he's one of the feminist writers, understanding women so well. But I fail to understand him as a father, especially when he got his young daughter married, I think at the age of 11, so that his father can, bear the wedding costs. So, I mean, those contradictions which...
Yeah. I haven't talked that whole thing, his relationship with his own father, which was also a very ambivalent one. On the one hand, the father left him very free to select what he wanted, but his father also had very strong social. And I think this was also Rabindranath himself married a child bride. His wife was 9 years old. And when he had gone to England, he has written those letters called Letters from a Sojourner in Europe. A 17-year-old, if you read those letters, I mean, they, I think, to me, express his genius. They are wonderful letters, very, very. And there he is talking all the time of how much he admires the Western women, English women, they can talk, etc., and how much he is against children get married. And then he himself comes back to India, and the father says, get married to this and this, and he does. I think this is we all have contradictions or ambivalence. Rabindranath's own that he could not go against his father in these things. And I think he was ashamed of it, I think, of later on that he did that, although his conscious mind is saying, no, this is a bad thing to do, and yet he goes on and does it. And it went on the same, as you said, to his own daughter's part of it. We are all mix of contradictions, something old, something new. And so Rabindranath was a genius, but a human being like everyone else.
Thank you so much. And to everyone who wants to ask questions, let me just tell you, we have another 15 minutes and we'd make sure every single person who wants to ask gets a chance. So be patient about it, ma'am. Yes.
What would you say is the essence of Tagore as a human being?
The essence of Tagore, again, something which doesn't come out in the whole chapter. To me, his essence is the most important part, is the importance of what he calls sympathy. Sympathy to me means connectedness to all life, to people, to environment. And he thought that this was also the idea of India. Actually, the idea of India is Rabindranath's phrase, because he talks once of idea of the West and idea of India, we contrast. He contrasts that the idea of the West, he says, is understanding the world, and then the power which you get out of it, which is also very important. So both are important, and the idea of India is sympathy, and that is what his was also, this connecting to the world, connecting to imagination. And he felt that to have sympathy is much higher than any kind of scientific, artistic achievement. So any human being who has this kind of empathetic connection to other people, to the environment around, is a much higher human being than anyone in any other kind of attempt. So that, I think, is the central theme of Rabindranath's own life in his poetry, but also which he then professes as what should be the idea of India, which he said is getting lost.
Thank you. We move on to this side.
Sir, thank you so much for this reading. It was an immensely illuminating experience. I just had this question. How different would your conclusions or your insights into Tagore have been if you had applied a Jungian lens to your studies of his work?
Since I haven't done that, I won't know. I don't think there is such that these the Jungian, Freudian lens, etc., are very different in this way, because the idea of sympathy, etc., is not a Freudian one. I mean, the Freudian would be kind of uncomfortable with it. No, but I don't know myself whether I have really applied any kind of Freudian lens, except, yes, the importance of as I said, that we are made of our relationships, and that our earliest relationships is where the truth lies. So in that sense, yes. But I don't think there's any that great a difference would be also in any other ones that are earliest relationships of how important they are. In fact, what neurosciences, which are now telling us of the formation of the brain or the synapses, that they're much, much more important than Freud or any we had always thought. They are even more crucial than what we had thought. That the connection with the earliest connection with the mother is what is forming our brains. A rat pup which is being licked. There are 1.2 million neural connections being formed every minute. So that connection, earliest connections, are even more important than what Freud or others might have thought at that time.
Thank you so much. Back there. Could you please pass the mic there?
What must have sustained his such a prodigious output, literary and otherwise, for such a long period? And the other question is about his Argentinian sojourn, where he met at a very ripe old age.
Okay. The first question is impossible to. That is the mystery of creativity. That is impossible to answer. Where does that come from? one can have all kind of answers, because his creativity comes in a period at the age of 8 where any other child would have been completely traumatized, which saved him, but that it goes on all through his life, etc. That is the mystery of genius. I mean, he's not just a talented, I mean, he's a genius, and geniuses are very, very difficult in that sense to where it comes from. You have all the canons, the Western canons, it's from the gods it comes, and then it comes that the melancholic, all kind of ways. I have no answer to that. The second question was yeah, well, I don't go into this because it finishes at childhood and youth. The Argentinian Victoria Ocampo you are talking about. He went to Argentina. He was very ill on that ship going to. That's also the time when he starts his paintings. Rabindranath came to paintings much later, at the age of, or almost at the age of 70. I mean, he had done kind of drawings, etc. But at that time he started saying that his paintings are really much more than his poems to get to it. And maybe paintings, maybe painters for curative purposes, because he was very depressed at that time when he was going to Argentina. He was very ill, and she took great care of him. But if you think, if you are referring whether they had anything together, no. I think she absolutely was like an acolyte. He was a great guru, etc. In fact, he often wanted to keep her a little away. She was too clingy. I mean, there were lots of people who wanted to cling to Rabindranath. Sometimes he liked it, sometimes he didn't. But any kind of, if you're referring to whether they had any kind of an affair, I don't think so at all. Rabindranath was a distant kind of a person, and even women, I mean, if you ask me, my feeling is he would rather be admired than bedded.
Thank you. Next question comes from there. We're just 8 minutes away, so we'd appreciate if the questions are short and precise.
You said the essence of Tagore was his sympathy.
Sympathy. But that is what he called it. You can call it empathy, philosophy, I mean, connection. Yeah.
I haven't read lots of Tagore, but it's amazing what he sympathizes everything outside. But for his own self, he's so hard on himself. There is self-pity throughout, you know. Since the time he's 5 to, you know, the constant thing has been self-pity for his own self. So
that is that's a very interesting thing, because it's not, if you read the other people which we know, Gandhi, I mean, how hard he was on himself. So it's the same kind of thing, that there are some people who are very hard on themselves. Now, if you're saying there's a connection between the two, that they do not give themselves enough sympathy, they do it through, I mean, not kind of through their work. I think in the poetry he's giving him sympathy through that, so they get it doing through outside, getting it in. But yes, you are quite right that the hard on himself, that he was hard on himself. Yeah, quite right about that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Next question comes this side.
The feeling is that you're sympathizing with Tagore's life. What does it do? What is your idea of what a work like this can do to the culture, to the people, to have sympathized with a creative mind of who is culturally so big for us?
You have to try and reframe it. I haven't quite completely understood.
Okay, so suppose Tagore came to you as a patient and you lived out the pain with him. What does it leave? What does it create? A process like this.
What does it?
Was there an intention of creating something by
Tagore?
Yeah.
Intention of creating. Intention certainly is always there, but I think it was a necessity. I mean, without his poetry, without that gift, at the age of 8 when he started writing poems, he would have, I think he would have had a very, very terrible time.
My question is, what was the necessity that you felt in attending to Tagore's loneliness and solitude?
I think this is, as I said, I went to Tagore through his paintings. So what I first saw was the female portraits. So the melancholy of age. So this was kind of the personal one which comes in, the melancholy of aging. You start looking at how somebody else, such a great person, dealt with it. So this is certainly, so my intention was a healing. I mean, any writing should also be, any creative thing should also be curative. So this was certainly part of it, yes. If you wanted that answer. All right.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Here.
Sudhir, I haven't read your book, but have you touched upon Gandhi and Tagore's relationship in your book at all?
No, I haven't. But of course, since I do all the research, I mean, I read about it because it finishes at that time. There's a very interesting relationship which Tagore thought Gandhi was you called him also in the writings, moral tyrant, that he has no sympathy with this kind of a person. But then he admired, then he kept more and more admiring of him, of that, of how he is self-sacrifice and how he can unite the Indian party. But he felt distant towards it because Tagore's was that Gandhi against the British Empire. Tagore was very not divided. He had dualities, all kind of dualities. Male, female, mother, father, works of man, inspiration of nature, India and the West. So he was not, he often went, didn't feel well in India, especially. And he said Gandhi is making all this against, and you cannot be against anyone, we will lose that. He was ambivalent towards Gandhi, as Gandhi was towards him. But the thing is, they admired each other still because of in spite of the ambivalence. And this is something which seems to have been completely lost with our current generation of leaders, that you can be different and still respect each other as they did, both of them. So he thought Gandhi was very good for India, but personally he thought this is not the way to go, that to be against someone, you have to always have sympathy for the others.
So just about 2 minutes away, two
Last
questions.
one. Okay.
I had the chance to attend your talk in Goa on the paintings of Tagore, and you spoke about Tagore representing himself in some of his portraits of women.
Yeah.
So from a psychoanalytical point of view, what kind of a need is he expressing in his representation of himself as a woman?
They're both things. I mean, psychoanalytical views. You see, Tagore has that duality in him, the male-female. That is why somebody who asked, how does some Tagore have such sympathy for women, etc., is because he had very much. It's very interesting. He writes that at the age of 12, he was with a schoolboy. They used to go home in the carriage, and then somebody just played a prank and said that actually Tagore is a girl, and that boy believed it. So he